In this lesson, we are going to cover the second part of secants and tangents. So the first thing we're going to talk about is when tangent lines intersect outside the circle. So here you have your two tangent lines, and they're intersecting outside of the circle right here. So we're going to talk about this angle that makes up the two intersecting lines. What we know about this is that the measure of the angle formed by two tangent lines intersecting at the exterior of the circle is equal to 1/2 the difference. Remember, difference means subtracting. So it's 1/2 the difference of the measures of the intercepted arc. So here we have our two tangent lines. You have those points. So you have this bottom arc, the pink line, and then you have the top arc. So you're always going to take the bigger arc and you're going to subtract it from the smaller arc. So it doesn't matter. It's not the top from the bottom or the bottom from the top. It's always the bigger arc minus the smaller arc, and then you're going to multiply it by 1/2, which is the same thing as dividing by 2. So for example, on this one, we are given the measure of arc ADB equals 250 degrees. And we want to know the measure of angle APB. So the first thing before we can solve this is we have to find the arc measure of the smaller arc AB. Now we know that a whole circle equals 360 degrees. So we can take 360 minus 250, which is 110. So now I know that that is 110 degrees. So remember, we're going to take the bigger arc minus the smaller arc, and we're going to divide that by 2. So we're going to take 250, subtract that from 110, and that's going to give us 140. We're going to divide that by 2, and that's going to give us 70. So we know the measure of angle APB is 70 degrees. Okay, on this one, it says the measure of angle APB is 34 degrees. We want to know what is the measure of arc AB. So here we know that this is 34 degrees. So obviously here we're missing two angle measures, and we can't take 360 minus something because we don't know what either one of them is. So what we're going to do here is we're actually going to label the big arc ADB. We're going to label it X. And then we can take the smaller arc AB, and we know that the whole circle is 360. So if we knew what X was, we could say that this is 360 minus X. So that's whatever the smaller arc is, it would be 360 minus whatever X is. So now we can actually set up a problem and solve it out. So we know here that the measure is 34 degrees. So we can say 34 is going to equal the bigger arc, okay? The bigger arc is X minus the smaller arc. So minus 360 minus X. And remember, we want to keep that in parentheses because it's together, right? We have to do that first, 360 minus X. And then we're going to divide that by 2. So the first thing that we want to do is just get rid of this 2 on the bottom. It's being divided by 2, so we're going to multiply both sides by 2. So that will cancel out my 2. And then if I take 35 times 2, that's going to give me 68. So that gives me 68 times X minus 360 minus X. Now this is kind of like having a -1 here. So that's like distributing the -1. So this will be X minus 360 plus X. So now I can add 360 to both sides, which is going to give me 428 equals 2X. And if I divide by 2, I get X equals 214. So I know this big arc right here is going to equal 214. So now all I have to do is just plug in X right there. I take 360 minus 214, and that's going to give me 146. So I know the measure of arc AB is going to be 146 degrees. The same rules apply if you have a tangent and a secant line that intersect outside of a circle. So here is our secant line. See how it's intersecting at 2 points, and then our tangent line. So you're still going to take the bigger arc minus the smaller arc and divide it by 2. So here it says the measure of arc ADE is 170 degrees, and the measure of arc AF is 80 degrees. So what is the measure of angle APF? So the same thing right here, you're just going to take the bigger arc minus the smaller arc. So you're going to take 170 minus 80, and then you're going to divide it by 2. So 170 minus 80 is 90, and 90 divided by 2 is 45. So you know the measure of this angle is 45 degrees. Here it says the measure of arc EF is 138 degrees. The measure of arc AF is 62 degrees. What is the measure of angle APF? So here we need to find the measure of arc ADE in order to find this measure, because remember the arcs, it's the intercepted arc. So we need this arc and this arc. So what we would do first here is take 138 and add it to 62, which gives us 200. And then we're going to take 360 minus 200, which is going to give us 160. So we know that this angle measure for this arc is 160 degrees. So now we just take the bigger arc minus the smaller arc. So we take 160 minus 62, and then we're going to divide that by 2. So 160 minus 62 is 98, and 98 divided by 2 is 49. So the measure of angle APB, or APF, is going to be 49 degrees. The last one that we're going to talk about is when secant lines intersect outside. And again, it's the same thing. When two secant lines intersect, it's the bigger arc minus the smaller arc, and then you just divide it by 2. So here it says the measure of arc GE. Oh, what is the measure of arc GE if the measure of angle HPF is 30 degrees and the measure of arc HF is 20 degrees? So here we're missing the bigger arc. So let's label the bigger arc X. So we know that X minus 20 divided by 2 needs to equal 30. So now we just use our algebra, multiply by 2 on both sides. That gives us X minus 20 equals 60. And then we're going to add 20 to both sides, and we get X equals 80. And remember, X was arc GE, which is what it asked us for. So arc GE is 80 degrees. And that is the end of secants and tangents, part 2.